So moving on to the snare, we'll make group B1 snare group, we'll name it snare. And then here on the hardware, got the first pad selected, use shift browse, and then we will use the snare. Kind of browse. Now again, as with the kick, you can see here the screen, we've got sort of similar parameters that are to do with the tuning, the attack, and some of the overtones and the noise layers. And you've got a couple of different engines again. Now, we start here with something that's volt, again, very 808y, and we end up with stuff like a very, very sort of hollow kind of ringy snare. So clap in there as well. So these different engine modes, they are a good mixture between very synthetic and very real sounding, organic drum sounding. So again, as we did with the kick, we'll just set up sort of two layers, one that is the synthetic side, one that is the sort of more organic overtones. This volt itself is just almost just a sine wave with some noise over the top. But that's excellent when I do make my drums, design them more with synthesizers or whatever. That's exactly what I go for. So this cuts out a lot of work, especially if you're a little intimidated with FM8. This is definitely a very good alternative for making your own snares and having a lot of control of them. Definitely prefer this over samples. Now I'm using volt again. We could just use the step mode to quickly just program two snares in. I might as well just solo this group for a second, and then also the velocity, we'll just set them to 100. I'll stop doing this in a second, but just if you never use the step sequence, it's very handy, especially if you're going to go in a bit more complicated on your patterns. All right, so here I'm looking at the parameters, both mapped out here and on the screen. I'm going to go and tune the snare a little bit, just up. I end up using these sort of techie kind of snares quite a lot, and prefer slightly higher pitches. There we go, the shift, I'll just dial it into a precise number if you have OCD. So I want this a little bit short. It has two different sort of modes here. The tonal for me is the most sort of clean sine wave that I like. So I find myself using that one. You sort of hear the body changing a little bit. Now we have got noise over the top. I don't really need too much of the noise here because I really want most of my overtones to come from the more organic snare that we lay over the top of this, but some noise is definitely a good addition to that layer as well. So again, just a nice, quick and easy, duplicate this snare to the second pad. And in the second pad, let's solo it so we know really what we're doing. In the second pad, we will change to one of the more real sounding snares. Let's use the iron mode, this one. Let's play them together. Let's just go into the mix so now I can really hear one and the other. Come out of mix, so we're on the second pad. Let's just actually that's pretty good for tuning. With the decay, fast drum and bass. You can sort of, in this case, you have a skin tune parameter, which is kind of tuning the up and down skins of your snare a little bit. So as you could do on a real snare, you can sort of hear that the overtones change just a little bit. It's not super consequential. The impact here again is something to do like as the bend that we had on the more synthetic drum synths. It just means it just sort of emphasizes the impact of your snare drum and your higher frequencies at the beginning. So I want to use my synthetic part here much more so for the impact, so I'm going to be a bit careful with that. Sort of in this area, let's play them together. I think in this case, the second snare with a little bit of processing. So let's go into this unsalt browse. And we'll first of all do the same as we did with the kick. We'll just put a clean filter in there. Just make sure it's a high pass filter, no resonance. We're just using it as a simple cut. It will take some of the fundamental out of that snare. And so we just have this as a proper sort of organic layer over the top. On this second snare, the snare layer, let's apply a little bit of transient designer as well. We could do that with the parameters, but as you can see in the original parameters here, they only have really a decay, so there's not so much enveloping really that you can influence on it. So let's just quickly add a transient shaper. Here we go. Now again, let's just listen to what we're doing. I want a little bit more attack, and I want it to be a little bit more controlled. I could hear a bit of ringing at the end. It's not that dramatic, but eventually I want to limit this quite hard, and I believe that this will come out more. Could decide to not limit here, not a major difference. We can go down sort of this route. Now, also, there's still not a lot of body in this snare. It's a little quiet. So let's just go a little bit onto the software. Just use the mouse for a moment because I want to use just like a little bit more of a precise EQ than the built-in one, like the Pro Q. You can double-click here or click this arrow so that you can actually see it. In this case as well, might be useful just to quickly turn the analyzer on. And you can see the main fundamental here. We could really emphasize that a little bit, just to get a really sort of weighty kind of modern snare. A low cut, it's just, you know, we're talking about very low volume, but why not? And then a little bit of definition. I'm sort of listening to the top end, like 3 maybe. Maybe some here, you know, just for a little bit more sparkle to it. But you know, this is all being applied to the group, so again we've got a nice bit of processing. You could use a little bit of saturator here, but these are sort of some rough parameters to set this up for the moment.